All right, welcome back. This is Course 1, Lesson 2, How Does a Utility Make Money? Something that's near and dear to all of our hearts. Some of the objectives we're going to unpack today, we're going to revisit the secret formula, we're going to talk about some financial definitions, creating shareholder value, we're going to talk about some of the components of that formula, and then we're going to spend some time doing an overview of a case filing. As always, I'll be your host, Luke Skywalker. Whether we watch TV or read the newspaper or listen to the radio, finance is all around us. And understanding money and how it flows through and how it hits the bottom line, it's so critically important. Some of us remember The Apprentice. This song is from that television show, and it was all about entrepreneurial finance. And I grabbed a quote from Donald Trump, and I don't know whether we agree with him or not. I thought that was pretty interesting. Money wasn't as big a motivation, except as a way to keep score. He just enjoyed playing the game. So let's get started. We revisited this formula, and it had a couple of parts to it. It had our rate base, it had our operating costs, income taxes, and most importantly, it had a revenue requirement. And it was our revenue requirement that really determined what we needed to cover. We needed to cover our operating, financial expenses, our taxes, and it gives us the opportunity to provide a fair rate of return. And it's that opportunity. We're not guaranteed. We have the opportunity. That's why we spend so much time managing our expenses and talking about them. Revenues equals sales, but it also equals the customer charges per our rate classes, also called base rates, not to be confused with profits. And it's also, try not to confuse it with rate base. It gets confusing. Rate base is invested capital, represents the total cash investment shareholders and debt holders made in the company. So it leads to a question: how does a company create shareholder value? And if you remember from our last lesson, we talked about IOUs, investor-owned utilities. And remember, utilities require substantial investment to build power plants because they're really expensive. Investors, to invest, they're looking for some surety, some consistency before they're going to invest into a utility. So as a utility, to create shareholder value, we can achieve our allowable rate of return, and that's above the shareholder's cost of capital. That's how you create shareholder value. So we talk about sufficiency and deficiency. Let's break this apart. And in the graph, there's two lines: revenues in green and expenses in red. And there you'll see an inflection point. And when revenues are above expenses, we're sufficient. We don't have to go to a rate case. When expenses are above the revenues, then we're deficient. And that's when we hit the panic button, maybe the easy button, and we want to file a rate case. But if you remember, there's risks. We could lead to rate decreases, the commission can impose other requirements, and the outcome could be unsuccessful. So we try to stay out of the rate case, and we try to manage our expenses. Now, this is a little bit of a sidebar, but if you get the chance, go out to our investor relations page and watch the video on EEI that Jerry Anderson did. He really walks through the chronological order, kind of an order of importance of how he views us in a company. He actually starts with employees. Employees are number one. He moves on to the customer, moves on to CI, and then he ends with investors. And I don't know if that's apparent to everybody, but it's really how he looks at us as a business and as a company. So we drill down to this components. Now let's talk about the formula again, and let's talk about rate base. And rate base, and actually revenue requirement, let's never forget that. It's the amount needed in base rates to support our capital and operating costs. And then we have our rate base, which is a utility plant, our construction work in progress, and our working capital. And rate base is the value of property the utilities are permitted to earn a return on. That's kind of big. I keep talking about we're allowed, we're not guaranteed. It's something we really need to understand. We have our operating costs is where O&M falls, and then how could we forget April 15th, income taxes. So if we talk about utility plant, this is the facilities, this is the land, this is everything we own that we can earn a return on. We have the ability to return on, as we always manage those expenses. And then we have the construction work in progress, or AFUDC. And the important thing here, some of it is included in our rate, some of it is not. And then the last two items we're not going to talk about today, but I wanted to include in this picture: cost of capital and return on investment. I want to go down and drill down to a kind of a chalkboard example in our next lesson, so that's something to look forward to. Moving on, we're going to talk about an overview of a rate case and what goes into it. So there's a number of parties. Obviously, the company, we have the staff, we have the attorney general, they're representing the customers. We have other interveners representing environmentalists, the attorney or the administrative law judges, and then the commission themselves that are actually issuing the orders. In the timeline or overview, there's a case development, we have audit discovery, a testimony, hearing, there's a post-hearing phase, and then the last box is this order implementation. this is probably too much detail to talk about here, but there's a couple of things I want to highlight. We have a self-implementation, kind of those two purple boxes. So after 6 months, we can self-implement, and then in red, you'll see the exam, the cross-exam. It's kind of a stressful period. And if you have to testify, you do understand that cross-exam and how stressful it can be. The timing of a rate order, it can be contested, there can be a settlement, or it can be filed ex parte. So in the next lesson, here's what we're going to be talking about: a numerical example of a rate case filing. Thank you for participating today, and look forward to seeing you in the next class. Thank you.